It is Wednesday, my dudes, which means it is time for another First Thoughts and Initial Impressions Epic 7 video. And this one will be on Summer Break Charlotte, the newest Summer 5-star limited hero that was just shown this morning. Yes, there was a leak, but I usually try to wait until the official announcements before I actually do my videos, just for safety's sake. In this video, I'll give you my thoughts on not only the character, but the artifact, as well as a couple of equipment builds that I think might be pretty good on her as well. So yeah, just strap in, listen to the sound of my voice, and I'll give you my 2 cents. But before I actually jump into the S3 that we always start these videos with, if you have not already, there is a giveaway on this channel that is currently ongoing. It is for a signed print of Lionheart Ceremia. It is signed by her voice actress. If you want to learn more about how to participate in that giveaway, you can join my Discord and check out the giveaway channel. Links will be in the description. So, without any further ado, let's take a look at that cool S3 animation.
Look at those kids running around having a blast. I guess I've got no choice but to join in to make sure nobody gets hurt. You're hyper, aren't you? Follow me. Single file, please.
Alright, Summer Break Charlotte in the English dub of Epic 7 is voiced by Kat Cressida, who really shouldn't be a stranger to some of you at this point. She voices a whole host of characters in this game, including Vivian, ML Vivian, Falconer Clury, Charlotte, Little Queen Charlotte, and now obviously Summer Break Charlotte. She is most famous for voicing Dee Dee in the 90s cartoon Dexter's Laboratory. Moving on to her actual stats, she is an Ice Knight of the Gemini zodiac symbol, which means she shares a stat line with characters like Charles as well as Mort. She has 957 attack, which is very low for a 5-star hero, but I believe it is actually the highest amongst 5-star knights in the game. She has 6,148 health, which is respectable. This is in line with the average value you would expect from a warrior, for example. It's pretty low for a knight, but it is still a respectable health total nonetheless. Speed is 109, which is about average. 108 is usually where I consider to be like the baseline for a lot of characters in the game. You usually want to be at least faster than that, if at all possible. And obviously Summer Charlotte comes out ever so slightly ahead there. Defense is 634, which is again respectable. This is where you would expect like a bruiserish type warrior to be. Yes, she is a knight, but still really solid defense overall. Critical hit chance is actually 27%. The 37% that is displayed on your screen is due to her S2 passive, and we'll talk more about that in a minute. 150% critical hit damage, 5% dual attack chance, and no effectiveness or effect resistance. Overall, really good stat line for a bruiser or a bruiser-like damage dealer. Imprint release is health percentage for the team, which could be good for, say, like cleave matchups or things like that if you just need a little bit more health to survive. And imprint concentration is attack percentage, which wouldn't really have it any other way if you were trying to actually deal damage with the character, which, spoiler alert, you are. So let's start by talking about Summer Break Charlotte's S1, which is called a big one. Normally, I talk about them in the order that they're shown in the video, but I think it's a lot easier to understand how the character works if we actually just do it in sequential order. We'll talk about the first one, then the second one, and then the third one. So, called a big one, you acquire 20 fighting spirit upon use, attacks the enemy with 2 meaty fish, and has a 50 to 60% chance, depending on Malagora, to decrease the defense of the target for 1 turn. If this skill is activated as a dual attack, it will change into an AoE attack. The AoE attack does not trigger a counter attack and increases the combat readiness of Charlotte by 20%. Additionally, you can soul burn this move for 10 souls to get that AoE attack, and that AoE attack does not trigger a dual attack or a counter attack. This is a fantastic S1, and the name of the game for this character is going to be to get as many dual attacks as you possibly can. So Unity set is going to be really good on this character. If you've been sitting on some Unity gear that you haven't been using in a while, this is probably the character to use it on, because this is a really good S1. Has the most relevant debuff you could ask for in Defense Break. It is an AoE, which normally is very good, but unless you're playing against characters that have a lot of counter-based mechanics, in which case This move sidesteps that entirely, so that's already very good. And we've talked about in the past with characters like Mediator Kowarik as well as Landy how good combat readiness is on your character's basic attack. So this is just like a 10 out of 10 basic attack. It's really, really good, and it only gets better if you can somehow increase her dual attack chance. So again, I really think you want Unity set on this character for sure. When played optimally, I feel like Unity is the way to go on this character. 6 Unity, probably not so much because you'll hit the dual attack chance cap, but for sure, this character wants Unity, and this character would also be pretty good with characters that can help increase the dual attack chance as well. So now let's move on to her S2, which is a passive, an adult's responsibility. It increases the critical hit chance of Charlotte by 10 to 20% depending on Malagora. At the end of every 4 ally turns, she will gain enhanced dual attack and gain 15 fighting spirit. At the start of her turn, when her fighting spirit is full, she will consume all fighting spirit and dispel all debuffs on herself before giving herself a 2-turn attack buff, as well as reset all of her cooldowns, which is just the S3. It basically resets the S3 cooldown. The enhanced dual attack buff that she gives herself has the following effect text. When an ally except for the caster uses a skill and the caster is available to use a dual attack, attacks the same target with a basic attack, enhanced dual attack cannot be dispelled. Dispelled when the caster uses a dual attack. So this is just a fancy way of saying if a move would trigger a dual attack, so basically an S1, and she has this buff, she is the one that's going to be chosen 100% of the time as the dual attack target. So if it's up, you S1, she will always dual attack. If you use a move like S1 on Cerise or Lilius, she will always be the one that is called for the dual attack if she has the buff. And then they explain later on in the video that a move like Araz's Command Strike will call the person with the highest attack because that's what it's supposed to do. So if Charlotte is the one with the highest attack, she will be called. If she has enhanced dual attack and use Command Strike, and she has, say, like attack down and isn't the highest attack character, say it's somebody else, like say a Sirmia, for example, then the Sirmia would go in that case. So basically this distinction is if it's a move, an S1 that would have the possibility of being a dual attack and she has the buff, she goes. If it's an S1 that has a possibility of having a dual attack and it has to choose one at random and she has the buff, then she will go. If it is a dual attack move that has a specific parameter that chooses the dual attack and she has the buff, she will not go unless she's the one that is chosen with that parameter. So yeah, that's basically how you can think of it. Those are like your kind of 3 use cases for the most part. But as you can see from looking at the S1 first, now it makes a lot more sense. If I had talked about this passive first originally and you didn't know what the S1 did, you'd be like, well, why would I care about having extra dual attack chance? Well, extra dual attack chance means an AoE defense break that can't be countered and a CR push and all this other fun stuff. So yeah. This character basically starts with 47 critical hit chance, by the way, because of this passive. You have 27 from the Charles stat line plus 20% here. So you don't really miss that critical hit chance offset. And again, you probably should go Unity set because this character is just going to be a massive blue AoE DPS, which is a void I think we definitely need filled right now because pretty much your only blue AoE DPSs are like Seaside Bologna and to a lesser extent Rem. There really isn't a lot of that. One of the big things right now is we have a distinct lack of good AoE DPS in the format outside of like Bellion, who's constantly banned, which means that a character like Spectre Tenebria just kind of has free reign. So having more bruisers that are heavy hitting AoE characters is really, really good. And honestly, I think aside from the whole nonsense that is like speed meta and cleave, I would like to see that shift back towards that slower AoE based meta because then it brings other characters back into the fold like your Ambitious Tywins and your Last Rider Kraus. So I'm hoping that this character, if she is a meta pick, means that we will start to swing the pendulum back the other way towards like other formats with other characters that I think were a lot more desirable than the ones we have now. So that's really, really good. Just based off these 2 abilities alone, I think that we're just going to be in for a good spot. Like the characters got defense break, can't be countered, good damage, is AoE, has self cleanse, has self attack buff, resets the cooldown on her S3. So just again, off of all this, we're already in a really, really good spot. So the final one to talk about here is the S3, which is the hilariously bad named Well Hello There. So get your General Kenobi jokes out of the way now, I guess. So you acquire 3 souls upon use, and it has a 5 to 6 turn cooldown depending on Malagora. It is an AoE attack that attacks the enemy with a pod of killer whales before stunning them for 1 turn and increasing the speed of all allies for 2 turns. Damage dealt increases proportional to target's lost health. Even though it has a stun on it, you're probably still not building effectiveness on this. This is still like a really good S3. Just AoE stun with a 2-turn speed increase for everybody is really nuts. And then it is essentially an execute, because the lower the target's health, the more damage it's going to do. So the first time you use it, it's probably just for utility, just for the potential stun and the speed up buff, but it's probably not going to do a lot of damage. And then when you get the reset from the S2 passive, then it will obviously be much more impactful, because by then, hopefully, you will have softened them up with some dual attacks, some defense breaks, and this move will do a whole heck of a lot more damage. It's pretty straightforward, and honestly, it's a really strong S3. The fact that you can reset an AoE execute that also doubles as a speed buff is really good. Like, it's very reminiscent of Landy when you think about it. Like, that is a hard-hitting S3 that gives speed to the whole team and has the potential to be reset and come out of nowhere and just win you the game. This is very, very similar in terms of that. In fact, I'd argue it's better / worse in the fact that, like, the initial full burst from Landy is just good, not great. Whereas the initial one from this one could be really impactful because of the stun. And then full burst, like later on when you have Chief is on the scene fully stacked, is game ending. Well Hello There is another game ending S3 in terms of the fact that, like, we have to see how much damage you get as they get lower on health. But, like, I would assume, like, if it's like Fighter Maya, where it's like 30% is just like a death, or less is like a death sentence to nearly anybody, then yeah, this could be a really, really crazy good S3. Overall, I think Charlotte is a really strong character, and because she's a limited, I think you should 100% pick her up. Even if I didn't think that she was good, I would still recommend you pick her up because of the whole Landy fiasco from when she first came out. Landy, if you didn't know, was awful at release, so a lot of people passed on her. Then they buffed her without bringing her banner back for a long time, and she just was the meta and the best character in the game. So even if Charlotte is not like the best character in the game, she is a much needed game piece for PvP, in my opinion. She's going to be very strong. I do think she's going to see a lot of RTA play, at least for standard compositions. Like standard bruiser players, this character I think is going to be played quite a lot because, again, just like with Sage Vivian, she fills that niche that we so desperately need. There is a void that there just aren't good damage dealers in a particular spot, and I think Charlotte fills this one out. So if you didn't get Sage Vivian and you really felt that you needed a character like Sage Vivian, Charlotte's not going to be the same exact type of thing, but it's still a competent AoE damage dealer with a lot of good utility on her. So I do expect her to make waves. No, no pun intended there. As for sets, Speed Unity is probably just going to be the standard, although I do think Destruction Unity will probably be the ideal pickup because Destruction just gives the most amount of gear score at this point. So if you have really insane Destruction gear and some good Unity pieces, that's probably the way. I think Lifesteal might also be viable in the same way that it is for a character like Seaside Bologna, because there's just going to be so much AoE damage being put out that you would just become incredibly difficult to kill, especially if you have like really high defense and really high bulk, which you probably should, because almost every Charlotte has a pretty good shot of having like a 1500 defense to 15k HP spread for the most part. So that's going to be it for talking about her and my thoughts. Let's now move on to talking about her artifact. Charlotte's artifact is Mature Sunglasses. It increases the critical hit damage of the person wearing it by 15 to 30% based on the artifact's level, and when attacked, decreases damage suffered by 7 to 14% based again on the artifact's level, and that doesn't stack with other damage reduction passives. So it's Draco Plate for knights for the most part. Draco Plate gives the 30% critical hit damage and some form of damage reduction passive. This is very much the same thing. The problem I have here is that knights in general have, in my opinion, the best artifacts in the game. Them and mages, because mages have book, obviously. How do you choose this over something like Elbrus Ritual Sword? So, like, normally on paper, this seems absolutely insane for a character like Bellion until you remember that you need Elbrus Ritual Sword for Bellion to do her job. And traditionally, characters like your Morts, like your Illinabs, like your Charleses, they need Elbrus Ritual Sword to actually do this. So then I started to look at like other knights that could possibly want mature sunglasses aside from Charlotte. And then you come to a character like Fighter Maya, which it might be good on, but then you remember how good Noble Oath is, and when you get low on health, Noble Oath just feels so much stronger than this. So I don't think you want that there as well. Pretty much it comes down to, you could play it on Charlotte herself, obviously, and it would be pretty good. Me personally, I would probably play Spear of a New Dawn on Summer Charlotte. That is Senya's artifact, because if you've ever played Red Charlotte with Spear of a New Dawn, you realize just how much extra damage you get out of Spear of a New Dawn for the character. Spear just does a lot of extra damage on S1s, especially if it's an AoE S1. You're just doing a lot of damage to the enemy team. And based on how much damage this character actually does and how high you can get her attack, especially since she gives herself an attack buff, I think Spear is going to end up out-damaging this thing by quite a bit. I could be wrong, but I think Spear is going to be the way to go if you want damage. But having some extra damage reduction would be nice. The character I think actually that benefits the most from this artifact is actually Chaos Inquisitor, because he has a passive that it says he has to take so many hits before he dies. I believe it's he can not take more than 25% of his max health at a time in a single hit. So having some extra damage reduction on him makes him even more difficult to actually kill, which keeps him on the board longer. And he already hits really hard. I have seen people use him in the past. I've had guildmates that have used him in like Champion and even Emperor as like a gimmick or a surprise to kill somebody in the past. So it's not that Chaos Inquisitor is like a meta unit or like not unplayable or any of that. Like, I think he is going to be the best option, at least off the top of my head, for it. It's probably still a meme, but maybe, just maybe, it helps him get there for once. Because his damage is very, very good, again, especially for a 3-star. So, yeah, I think that you pick this up, this artifact, but I struggle to see where it would ever be the best play, because anybody who actually really wants to be a DPS knight is almost always better off with Elbrus Ritual Sword, because you're just going to get a higher frequency of S1s. And then the ones, like I said, like Summer Charlotte might be better on Spear, and Fighter Maya is probably better on Noble Oath. So, yeah, I don't know where you play it. It's a good artifact. If you pick up a bunch of them while trying to get Charlotte, that's great. But I wouldn't go like super overboard to try and pick up a whole heck of a lot of these. Who knows? It could age terribly, that opinion, because it is, at the end of the day, essentially Draco Plate, and Draco Plate is really, really good. But I think the reason why Draco Plate is so good is because warrior artifacts, for the most part, kind of suck. So Draco Plate feels amazing in a sea of mediocrity, whereas Mature Sunglasses does not feel anywhere near as good when put up against like the titans of the game, like your Elbrus Ritual Swords and your Ariuses, like the staple artifacts that are probably going to be with the game forever and are never really ever going to fall out of favor. Again, if like Mature Sunglasses was on like the Ranger class, it would probably feel really good. But again, as it is with the Knight class, Knight classes having some of the best artifacts in the whole game, it just doesn't feel as good to me. So that's going to be it for the video. If I missed anything, let me know down in the comments below. And it's fitting that we are talking about Summer Charlotte, because this is going to be the last video I put out for the rest of the week, because I am going on a much deserved vacation. So I will see you all sometime next week. Until then, be excellent to one another, and I'll see you then. Bye-bye now.